welcome to the Home Services Summit webinar series. I couldn't be more excited about this exchange we'll be having with Brian here in a minute, and going into what he's been building. And also I'm super excited because he's a fellow Canadian, and I just love it when I find and get to spend time with Canadians that are building amazing companies. As you all know, he is the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And as we were talking backstage, they have a few of the brands. Wow One Day Painting, they started in 2011, I think. And then 2016, they started Shack Shine. So a few brands. My name is Scott Abbott. I'm the CEO of 5-Star Franchising and one of the founders of ProNexis. Our mission at ProNexis is to transform the customer experience in the home services industry through voice, chat, text, and instant booking. So format, if you've been on here before, you know, we're just going to go live with questions for myself to Brian, and we'll have a conversation around. And in fact, Brian might be asking me questions. Who knows? It's been great backstage so far. We'll just continue that theme throughout the next 45 minutes. On the chat section on the far right side of your screen, you'll notice you can just throw in questions you may have for Brian or I, and I'll make sure we reserve 15 minutes at the end of our interview to answer those for you. So real quick bio on Brian. Serial entrepreneur and author. Brian has always taken the road less traveled. At just 19 years old, he pioneered the industry of professional junk removal with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which in a throwback for me, because I actually remember this, being from Winnipeg and in Canada, driving to work when I was formulating the ideas of 5-Star Painting, and just thinking how much I hated driving to BDO Dunwoody's offices in downtown Winnipeg, Manitoba, wearing a suit. I hated it. And I was just thinking, what was I going to do? And as I was driving down Pembina Highway in Winnipeg, I would look over and see this purple 1-800-GOT-JUNK truck and guys with purple wigs waving at all the people who were stuck on Pembina Highway. And I was thinking, man, I wish I was them, right? I mean, just get me out of this traffic jam. But, Brian's been building companies for years. If those of you that don't follow him, you should. He's always open to sharing ideas around people, around culture, on business, and has been an inspiration to many people. One of his books, which I love, is called WTF, and that stands for Willing to Fail. How failure can be your key success, and BYOB, build your own business or be your own boss. Okay, Brian, let's just go right back to the beginning. First of all, why junk? What got you? I mean, I've seen pictures of you early in the business, in some small dungy area, formulating your plans. What got you into junk removal?
Yeah, I was looking for a way to pay for college. I was one course short my high school diploma. And I remember all my friends were going to college, every single one of them without exception, except me. And I had FOMO. I didn't want to miss out. And I thought, okay, I got to figure this out. My dad, my mom weren't going to pay for my education because I didn't finish high school. So I was in a McDonald's drive-thru of all places, and I see this beat-up old pickup truck, plywood sides built up on the box, and it said Mark's Hauling. It was filled with junk. And I'm like, that is my ticket. That's how I'm going to pay for my college education. So I found the funding, but without a high school diploma, I had to be very entrepreneurial and talk my way in to college. And I approached the admissions office 3 times, and I said, guys, I can do this. You got to let me in. Give me a chance. Take my money. And so they let me in, and I had this business to fund my way. Now, I went to, ironically, I've gone to 14 schools from kindergarten through to college. My dad and mom, we moved around a lot. My father's a liver transplant surgeon. We moved to different countries. So that was part of so many different schools. But most of it was me getting kicked out of school, being very ADD and having a hard time sitting down, which entrepreneurs often struggle with.
Yeah.
And I never finished anything except kindergarten, never finished high school, never finished university. I remember the day about 3 years into my degree where I sat down, my business degree, and I sat down with my dad. I said, I got some good news for you. He has a seat, and I say, I'm quitting university. And he said, how is that good news? And I said, because I'm learning so much more building a business than I am running it. Running it more than I am studying it in school. And I made that decision to leave. And my dad probably wanted to disown me at the time. His oldest son's becoming a junk man. And but the rest worked out. And clearly he's on side today and everything's fine. But it was for entrepreneurs back then, there was no entrepreneurial program in school. It was unheard of. And the best way to learn was doing. So there you have it.
Well, I'm going to take a little sidetrack here for a moment because last night, my wife and I are up. I've got 5 kids. You can see some of them in the background there. Wow. And 2 of my children have pretty severe ADD. My wife claims I have it. I don't accept that. And if it is, I would claim it's a superpower.
For sure.
My wife and I are in our beds talking about what we're going to do with Colin. He's my 13-year-old son. He's just an amazing amount of energy, but really struggles in school. Like, he's throwing up 8% in math and 8% in English, and he can't focus. And as a father, I'm struggling personally. I'm struggling. How do I help my son accomplish something in his life and be able to focus himself in a way that can really have power? I'd love to hear from you. How did your dad help you? And, what do you do right? And give me some advice here as a father of a couple of kids who have ADHD. And I'd say one of them pretty severe case. What would you say? What would be your advice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk for an hour on that. So first of all, no one was talking about ADD back then, right? I'm 52 years old. When I was 13, my dad's a doctor and he wasn't talking about ADD. Nobody was. I was just a challenging kid. I was a kid that couldn't focus, couldn't sit down in school. The teachers knew I was the class clown. And while some of the kids found it funny, the teachers didn't enjoy it. If I look back at my report cards, I've kept very little in my life. I'm a minimalist, but I have all these report cards. For whatever reason, I kept them. Brian was a disruptor. Brian, if he could only sit down and focus, he could apply himself. He would be so good. I couldn't apply myself. I think someone that has ADD, there's a bit of a chemical something going on that makes it difficult. Now, true story. So I love my coffee and I drink a lot of coffee. And I learned, I don't know, maybe a decade ago when one of my kids met a friend and they were at Starbucks and this 10-year-old was drinking a big Americano. And my daughter goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm drinking coffee. My doctor told me to." So an alternate treatment for ADD, if people don't want to go the medical route, is coffee. And I did that innately. When I get disfocused, I go grab another coffee and then immediately that stimulant helps my brain. So I'm known to drink coffee all day long. For me, ADD, I 100% agree, is a superpower. There's a doctor, Dr. Newell, Howard Newell, I think is his name. And he studies ADD and especially in entrepreneurs, because we all seem to have it, even if we might deny it. But it's a superpower because it has us insanely focus on something when we know it's something that we love. When he came to speak to my Birthing a Giants class in Boston, an entrepreneur program I've been a part of for 22 years, he came and spoke. And about 45 minutes through, he said, "You guys all think," there's 60 of us, hyper-growth entrepreneurs, "you all think you're ADD and that you don't have the ability to focus." He goes, "In the last 45 minutes, I could have dropped a pin and every single one of you would have heard it because you're interested in this topic. And you can focus in a laser type way. You choose what you want to focus on." And so I think where it's a superpower, as you mentioned, is we go, that's an opportunity. No one else sees it. I'm going to chase it. I'm going to make it happen. It's going to be unbelievable. If I didn't have ADD, 1-800-GOT-JUNK would not exist. Absolutely would not exist, nor would it be what it is today, because I would have just been like everyone else and I would have missed the opportunity. So, all that to say, as a parent, how do I manage kids with ADD and help them? I think it's just showing them opportunity. If you give them enough different things to look at and see that something might catch their attention, and if it does, and they start to focus on it, you can encourage that path.
So I want to spend some time on this. It wasn't what I intended to do, but I do this for my own personal benefit. And this is really helpful to me. And just as you're talking, I'm thinking a few things and myself as a kid, which I was accused of many things in my report cards as well. I have boundless energy. It's just there. And it is a superpower, right? The challenge that comes with lots of challenges. What I want to spend some time on for you is, have you noticed as you've gotten older, has that become more muted and more controllable? Like, I know you're drinking coffee as a way to try to manage it, but have you noticed that as you've matured, that what ADHD means to you is different? And have you changed in some ways and learned to manage and cope with it?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've changed is I've gotten wiser as we do when we get older and get some gray hairs and the whole bit is I find that I'm able to be aware. So I'm able to understand. So yesterday I had quite a bit of just feeling like I couldn't focus and get stuff done. So I went and worked in a coffee shop, and I had the energy around me of other people, but no distractions of people coming and saying, "Hey, Brian, what about this? What about that?"
Yeah.
And then when my attention started to wane a little bit, I went for a little walk, went and grabbed another coffee at a different place. And I was like, I just know how to manage the ebbs and flows of that energy.
So you're picking it up. You're noticing, oh, I'm coming off track.
Totally.
And you're doing something to bring yourself back because you've learned how to manage yourself in those environments.
Yeah, I know how to manage
that brings a lot of hope.
Yeah, but it's awareness. So I think it's being aware that, first of all, when it happens, it's okay. And sometimes you got to push through it because you're in a meeting that's important, even though you're bored, even though you feel like you're not adding value or getting value. But most of the time I can adjust and find a way around it. And sometimes it literally is just go for a quick 2-minute walk, go grab another coffee, go have a quick conversation with someone about something unrelated and bring my energy and focus back.
So you found ways, some coping mechanisms that are healthy, that you know you can go to, that are tried and true, that get you back to where you want to be. So now I want to spend some time on, like, for you, knowing you have this strength, and I'm sure for some people it's probably almost too much, right? Could be your wife, or it could be your dad. I don't know. Maybe someone you're working with, but someone might say that's like, it's sometimes there's just too much Brian happening, and I've heard that from time to time. How have you hired? Look, when you hire people now, and you were talking about some of your managing directors of your brands, how have you thought about who you hire? And are you hiring someone different now because you have this superpower, if you will, and you need to have someone that's more balanced and focused and centered versus someone that has lots of ideas and wants to always pursue something different?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little story. So in my book, WTF, Willing to Fail, there's a chapter called Nitro and Glycerin. My COO, Cameron Harold, and I, great buddies, we talked the other day. He was someone that was with us from 2 million to 106 million. But together we were like nitro and glycerin. They're inert when they're separate, but you put them together, boom, everything explodes. We had so much fun together, but we were both so ADD that we were so fire ready aim that what worked to get the company from 2 million to 50 million, we needed that energy. Nothing could stop us. But as the company started to get to 100 million, we needed a rigor and a discipline that we were no longer this little motorboat navigating the ocean. We were this big freighter. And you've got to think through in a more planful way. So to your question, yes, we do hire differently. Eric, who's our COO and president of O2E Brands, great friend, great mentor, has been with us 11 years yesterday. And the guy is unbelievable because he'll go, Brian, that's a great idea that you just shared. But let's park that for 6 months and see if it's still a good idea. Or he'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. And actually that needs to bump ahead in priority and let's go do it. So he's able to look at it in a different light and say, when's the timing of when we do this versus what entrepreneurs who are pure entrepreneurs with a lot of ADD and hyper energy will sit there and go, I got a new idea. And what does that do to our teams? It makes people just go crazy. So the two of those together, Eric and I are like a yin and yang, and it's like magic. So it's important to have someone that complements both your strengths and your weaknesses.
So how did you know, how did you know Eric, who Eric is? I understand you see how you guys fit perfectly together. And I actually feel very fortunate because I have some people like that around me that are exactly what I need to really get the performance I want. But how did you come to realize that Eric or someone like Eric is exactly what you needed? And do you do personality testing to, like, as you're hiring, are you like looking for something very specific? And if so, what is it you're looking for?
Yeah. Our recruiting method, we call the beer and barbecue test. Would you have a beer with someone? Do you find them interesting and interested? Eric and I literally had a beer together. I flew out to Toronto where he was based and gainfully employed and leading a great company. And in my process of looking at 75 different COOs, CEOs, I was on the planes traveling around, and I met with Eric, and he had something different. And it was just this, I remember Eric said to me that he'd always wanted to run a company like 1-800-GOT-JUNK, was something he had said to his wife when they were on vacation somewhere. And he was attracted to our culture and attracted to the magic, but he had this part military background with corporate leadership. He was suit and tie, buttoned up guy. I'm the jeans and Converse kind of guy. But there was some magic there. And Eric and I spent a long time in the courtship phase, so to speak, getting to know each other to make sure it was a great fit for both of us. So I think what people do wrong in hiring is they, sit down and over Zoom or in person. So Scott, tell me about a time that you blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Instead of going, so Scott, what makes you tick? Oh, I see you got 5 kids. So tell me more about them. What are their names? What do you do for fun? You ski in Utah and this and that.
Yeah.
Getting to know people and making sure there's a cultural connection first and foremost. That's our beer test. And the barbecue test is how would they fit in with the team? If Eric was there leading the entire party, how would people feel about him? Does he care? Does he put the business first, not himself? And so they're two sort of different things, the beer and barbecue test, but it works for us. We do it with franchise owners. We hire on attitude, train on skill. Now, if we need a CFO to run the financials, of course, we get our auditing firm, KPMG, to make sure that this person knows what they're talking about. But it's cultural fit first and foremost. And I found that in Eric. And I knew he came from a rigorous, balanced place. I mean, here's a little story that tells you something about him. I don't know anybody that makes their bed in a hotel room except Eric. You have people in hotels.
That says a lot. That says a lot.
I grew up with this discipline. If you make your bed, the second you get out of it and start your day. And he does it in a hotel room. And I'm like, but people come and do that for you. Why would you do that? And he's like, but it's not for me. For them, I do it for me as my rigor, my discipline, and my daily routine. And so that says a lot about him. And I'm super grateful for having that discipline in our business.
I've never heard of anyone say that before. But, in saying that, it was kind of funny because my wife and I have this problem. She wants me to make the bed every time I get out of bed. And I say, why would I make the bed? I have to go back to it. And I go right back in the bed later on. I don't need to make it. It's a waste of my time. I don't see that helps anything. I don't get that. Right. But yet this idea of doing something productive the first part of your day, I do cold showers. I do something difficult every day.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's like, get it out of the way. Do something hard at the beginning of the day so that when the hard decisions come later, it's not as difficult for me to make those decisions. So smart. I understand the idea, but making beds doesn't click for me at all.
Yeah.
So you mentioned culture, and when you're hiring, how you call it beer and barbecue. I don't know if I know what are the cultures at OE2 Brands, and do you have a culture for each brand, or is it for just the parent company and everyone else kind of rolls up into that?
Do you mean values?
Yeah, the core values of the organization.
Core values, yeah. So O2E Brands, by the way, stands for ordinary to exceptional. So we took the junk removal business and we said, how do we make the ordinary business of junk removal exceptional? How do we do it with Wow One Day Painting, making the painting world exceptional? And then, of course, with Shatshine, windows, gutters, power washing. That word exceptional is really the thread through everything we do in terms of our culture. Ordinary people doing exceptional things, exceptional leadership, exceptional growth and development, care for people. Our core values are 4 things: passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. It spells pipe. Mm-hmm. We use those values, and our people use those values to say, hey, Brian, that decision you made, that decision where you just did X, Y, Z wasn't done with pipe. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, tell me more. How do I learn as a leader? What wasn't done with pipe? Well, you weren't very professional in how you did this. You didn't have empathy for our people in that decision. And so we can hold ourselves accountable to our values. They've never changed. They never will change. When we discovered our values, what we did was a simple exercise that I created instinctively, was taking Post-it notes. And I said, I want everybody to write down words that describe who we currently are today and we think we will always be. not who we aspire to be, but who are we today? We did all these words and we took the Post-it notes, all 8 of us in a leadership meeting way back in the early days. And we posted them up on these windows of this retreat that we were at. We sorted them and they fit into 4 categories: passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. And I think what I hear from others that do a similar exercise, but I think often get it wrong, is that they don't discuss who are they today and will always be. They instead talk about who do we want to be?
Yeah.
But you have to look in your core. I mean, I'm guessing that the Scott today is fairly similar to the Scott 10 years ago and 10 years prior to that. And so it's easy to build a business based on the values of who you always will be. And it's worked for us.
I'm really thankful you shared that. What's interesting is just recently, because we've purchased a lot of companies recently. And so our company's grown very quickly. So a lot more people are in the organization, and the values of the organization, it's even more important to get them embraced by everybody.
Yeah.
So we actually just did that exact exercise. We call it 5-star drive. D stands for driven, I is innovation, V is vital to our franchisees, E is enthusiastic. And so that whole exercise has become something that everyone's embraced because they're all part of it. But it was just the exercise you mentioned, which was not about being aspirational, but who are we? And the way we did it was we just said, okay, let's talk about the best people in our company. And we've named somebody. Okay, Dean Hartley is an example of one of our brand presidents.
Oh, I love
We
Dean.
put him up on the wall. Everybody talk about who he is and why he's so amazing.
Yeah.
We started writing down all the words that describe Dean Hartley. I said, okay, now let's put someone else up there. And we did that with everybody. And then we took all that into that one acronym that we now use.
Right.
And another thought that I went through, so when I sold 5-Star Painting in 2015, part of it was probably my ADD, I don't know. But it also had to do with the fact that I just, I'd been doing that for so long and I was tired. And I was tired of leading a company and I was just tired of the business piece. I needed to take a break. Looking back, I probably should have just taken like a 6-month hiatus and I'd been fine. But instead I sold the company and I took my family to Europe and we lived there for a little while with the 5 kids I have and that picture behind you.
Where'd you live?
And we lived in Lyon, France. So I speak French. I lived in France for a few years. Yeah. And so I wanted my kids to experience that culture.
Yeah.
And so
I speak French as well. We could shift right now and do the second half of this in French just to mess people up. Right.
That'd be so cool.
Oh, no, it'd confuse people for sure.
Yeah, we won't go there. But what was really... so we rented this castle in the middle of some vineyard just outside Lyon. You can imagine the setting. It's stunning, right? Yeah. And the chocolate there's amazing. The food's amazing. It's a small town called Eclassin, which is like 500 people. And we rented the castle for that small town. We're in the castle. I have all my kids with me. I said, okay, kids, I want to know what makes the Abbott family, what's important to us. What are our values as a family? So I started doing leadership with my family like I do with my own company. And I said, okay, let's pretend that we've all run off a cliff and we're all dead. And people are piling into our funeral. It's a sad day. The Abbott family is gone. But when they stand up at the pulpit, what do they say about you? And it was a very emotional experience. And it created the values that we have as a family. It's up on our wall. We call it, there's the 4 L's, but it was something that live, love, learn, and lead. It was something that very much brought our family together around who we are and who we want to be. And so for those of you listening, if you ever are, getting that kind of an exercise, you're trying to find out who you are and who you want to be. Those are 2 great ways of approaching how you understand what the values are of your family or your company or your people.
So good.
This has been a pleasure so far, Brian. Thank you. So I want to get into maybe some tough decisions. Most of the people who are tuning in, some are early stage founders of concepts and home services. Some have been doing it for years. And I'm sure they want to know about some of the hard, tough decisions you have to make as a leader. And I'm sure you've had many of those. What would you say was the hardest decision you've had to make in your business so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's many, and I'll share some of them. But I found that at the time it was like, oh, here we go. Here's the hardest decision I've ever made again. When you're in it, it can be so painful and emotional. But my willing to fail WTF philosophy is, if I can take myself out of that challenge for a second and go, the business will be in a better place one day because of this. I need to go through this lesson. I need to go through this failure. So I think the toughest ones are always ones that have to do with people. So in 1994, 5 years into my business, 11 bad apples, so to speak, in my company. Actually, I'd say of the 11 employees I had, 9 were bad apples. They just weren't the right people for me. They weren't optimistic. They weren't, to your value, enthusiastic. They weren't passionate. And I realized I wasn't having fun in my business anymore. A $500,000 small business with 5 trucks. And I came in one morning and I just sat down with everybody and I brought them in for a team meeting and I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that as your leader, I have let you down, haven't given you the love and support that you've needed to be successful. This isn't working for me. It probably isn't working for you. And we're going to part ways. And they respected the decision. And I rebuilt the company. I didn't even keep the 2 that might have been okay because I wasn't sure if they'd been tainted or not. Started from scratch. And I learned the lesson actually of the hat that I happen to be wearing today. It's all about people. Find the right people and treat them right. I hadn't found the right people. I wasn't treating them right. And this was going to change. So it's a tough decision to go from, okay, I've got customers on the schedule, junk to be hauled. I had to cancel it all. And I had to rebuild the business over, I think was about 6 months, trying to find new people. But that's where the beer and barbecue test of like, do I want to have a beer with this person? Do I like them? Do I find them interesting and a shared common value and so on? And it worked. And we've got a special company today. We just won, and I'm so proud of our team. We won Newsweek's one of the most loved companies in America. Even though we're in Canada, we're the only Canadian company actually on the list. And just felt so good about that. But if we didn't make that I didn't make that terrible mistake back in 1994, we wouldn't become a loved company. We wouldn't have existed as a company.
Yeah.
One of the tougher ones as well related to people, I mentioned this guy, Cameron Harold, and firing one of your best friends. I was the best man in his wedding. I gave the best man speech and toast. Then I got years later, fire the guy. I mean, that sucked for both of us. But Cameron would say today, if he was on this podcast, he would say, you know what, Scott, it was the best thing for both of us. It really was. We didn't see it in the moment. But Cameron's gone on to write 6 books and world speaking circuit and knows everybody and everyone knows him. And he's got this incredible thought leadership life. He's a nomad right now. Him and his wife are traveling the world, living everywhere. Like he's living the dream. But at the time, difficult decision. So those 2 examples, what my process, when I go through a tough mistake or a point of learning in my life, I pull out a sheet of paper when I'm ready. It might be an hour later. It might be a couple of weeks later. And I say, I answer this one question. What is one thing that will be better in my life or my business as a result of this mistake or failure? And sometimes I'm so inspired. And the greatness that comes out of this learning is unbelievable. I was speaking with a boys club at a high school yesterday, sort of an inner city-ish type school, some challenges there, and sitting with 60 kids. And they just couldn't understand this concept of failure. They kept saying to me, like, but what if you couldn't fail? What if you just kept like nailing everything? And I said, that would be boring. You'd feel like it was a hollow victory. You want these stories of longing and regret and disappointment. And it was funny. One kid put up his hand and he said, listen, I just moved here from Iran a year ago. I'm a good soccer player. I came out and played with the high school boys, my peers. I scored 36 goals in 3 games. Wow. He goes, that got boring. He goes, I moved up to an adult league. And he goes, it's so hard, but it is so much fun because I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm getting even better. He was playing at the wrong level. You don't want to just have it be a piece of cake and be easy. So make some mistakes, screw up, and figure out what you learn.
So one of the values of our family is learn, and that the 4 L's. And then next to learn, it says willing to fail. It is for our family, and I think because a lot of kids have a hard time, and people have a hard time accepting failure. But what you just said there is really important: is looking at failure as an opportunity to learn and grow. Like learning from your mistakes is where I find personally, I learn more from my mistakes than I do from my successes. So it is it's something to embrace. And the other thing you mentioned there, I want to just comment on is, letting go of people, especially for many entrepreneurs. The very first time you fire somebody, I cried. And like I bought the person flowers, and like, you know, I felt horrible that I was firing this person.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and I've come to realize, is if there isn't a fit in the organization, I'm holding somebody back. If they're here and they're not performing and they know it and I know it, I'm holding them back from a future that could be so much brighter. Like you mentioned here with Cameron Harold, where I know he's very happy. He's spoken to me on a couple of occasions about what you just described there himself. And looking at that as a very pivotal moment to where it's created who he is. And he would never have achieved that had that not happened.
Totally.
So understanding that when you let somebody go, it's not like you're, you know, firing them sounds like a bad thing. It could be a huge opportunity for both the company that they're at, as well as where they're going to go later on. So that's a great lens to look at things. I'd love to maybe dive into what I call your business operating system. For years now, you've been building the business. I know there's lots of different things out there people use and philosophies in terms of how they run companies. Do you have a particular business operating system that you use that's off the shelf, or have you made your own version of, you know, O2E brands?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have the O2E way, which is a little bit of Cameron Harold, a little bit of Vern Harnish and Gazelles, a little bit of EOS rather, the Entrepreneur Operating System, a lot of EO, a lot of YPO. We've just taken our own and said, hey, listen, like, take the best in the world of different things that we know work and put them together. Our painted picture process, Cameron would call it vivid vision. They're the same thing. I mean, we created this painted picture process of envisioning what the future looks like and then reverse engineering. I remember sitting down with Cameron Harold and saying, I envision things. I see pictures. I gave him the copy of the first painted picture I wrote. And Cameron said, I can't think in vision. And I said, of course you can. He goes, no. My job is to reverse engineer your vision and make it happen. Yeah. And I remember sitting down with Cameron and I said, if you were to go anywhere in the world tomorrow on a vacation, where money's not an object, where would you go? And he listed some tropical destination. I don't remember what he was drinking, what it smelled like, who was there, the sound, the feeling. And I go, you just created your own personal painted picture of a trip. You can use your imagination. You can think in the future. Yeah. Once he got that, you know, he's gone on to write books about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when you define the O2E way or the Gazelles way or anything, it's taking things from different people and then making it your own.
Yeah.
We've all got one job here, and I think that's to leave the planet a better place than we found it. And you share your system with the world, and someone copies it and takes it, and you know, it's great. It's great. It works.
Could we maybe dive into a little more granular detail for a moment? And this is out of my own pure personal curiosity, because I use we've used Gazelles, scaling up Vern Harnish's model, and I modified it to be kind of the 5-star way. And recently we embraced EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's something that, you know, there's books that they're there, there's training, there's coaches, and so it's been a lot easier for us to pull those people in to organization to help the entire company embrace a way of doing things. And for me, I found that it's more about making sure we all embrace the way than exactly how the way is, because you could kind of dial things in a certain way, but ultimately everyone has to just accept it and run with it. How do you tell me about how you work with your managing directors? Do you meet with them every week? Is there a stand-up on Mondays? Do you spend half an hour with them? Do you meet every Thursday or Wednesday for an hour with your whole team? Do you have daily huddles? Like, how do you kind of make your week work? And what are you attending as the CEO of the entire platform?
Yeah, so Vern Harnish would call it, what are your rhythms? So our daily rhythm is a huddle, a company-wide, all hands on deck. Everyone in the company, hundreds of people show up at 10:55 a.m. every single day to be a part of huddle. And what's working, missing systems, how are we doing with our key numbers, sharing good news. There's a video out there on YouTube if you type in, I think, O2E brands and huddle. But we do that every day. And that's the most important rhythm. That's the equivalent of sitting down at dinner with your entire family every day and going, what's up? How's it going? We have weekly business reviews.
Sorry, can I ask you, do you do that every day? And I mean, so you're traveling all the time.
Yeah.
So you can't be at every single huddle at 10:55 a.m. Or do you dial in if you're in Toronto and you just dial in remote and be there via video?
I dial in remote wherever I am on days I'm working. Okay. So if I'm on vacation, I'm not dialing in. I've got someone else covering for me. but it's the daily connector. If I'm on a plane, I'm not dialing in, but anywhere else, I mean, I'll be in my car and I'll pull over and I'll dial in, and people will see me sitting in my pickup truck and listening to Huddle. It's phenomenal. No one wants to miss it because you feel like you're missing a beat. And the rhythm for us is, how do we pulse faster and faster and faster?
Is that a 5-minute huddle? Is that what you do?
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Now, sometimes it's 9, but we generally stick to that 7-minute format. There's a process. It's a different leader every single day running the business. And you'll get a team lead in the call center running Huddle one day. You'll get Eric as the president running it another day. We just get all these different people, and it's a great chance to get to know them. It's a chance to light up the chat. All the introverts are weighing in with opportunities and cheerleading, and it's incredible. Really, we had Vern Harnish on our Huddle, and he came in maybe a year ago, and I said, "You inspired us to do this. This is Vern's Huddle that we created." And I go, "How does this feel?" And he was just loving the fact. He's like, "This is unbelievable how you guys do it, what you made of it." So grateful for Vern for inspiring it years ago.
That's awesome. So you do a daily huddle at 10:55. I love it's kind of a funny time, and just before another meeting starts.
Well, so here's the thinking on that. If you set your alarm in the morning for 6 a.m., it's easy to go snooze, get up at 6:10, 6:15, whatever. But 5:55, which is my preferred wake up time, it's precise. I tell myself the story. I get up before 6. So I got to get up at 5:55. Now, the pandemic kind of changed things and gave us different flexibility, and I lost some of my rhythms. But that is by being precise with Huddle, 10:55. You're late if you show up at 10:56. If we started it at 11 and people came at 11:02, they still feel like, it's fine. And it doesn't work that way. So I like the precision.
Yeah, I love that. So you're going on to explain how you have the daily huddle and you have a weekly stand-up with your direct reports?
Yep.
Is that right? Do you do town halls with the entire company, or does the huddle kind of replace the need for a town hall?
No, we do a lot of town halls. So we'll do, everything flows from the painted picture. Here's where we're going in 5 years. Break it down into the annual, break it down into the quarter, the week, the day, and so on. So lots of communication in our business. We have something we call a quarterly connect, which is an all hands on. Every quarter we get together in person. We have a monthly meeting where we get together. It's called an alignment meeting, where everyone comes together, and it's an online virtual, how are we doing towards our goals and targets? We review our numbers. We review the great game of business, which is our profit sharing and accountability focuses on the financials. And then weekly, it's we have a leadership team stand up once a week. We have a brand stand up once a month. So there's a lot of meetings. Now, as a CEO, I'm focused on vision, culture, storytelling. I don't have to be in all of Eric's meetings. Eric is the implementer. I'm the visionary. He's the implementer. He has a lot more rigor and discipline in his schedule with a lot of check-ins. My job isn't to check in. My job is to chat with Eric and focus on strategy and vision. But I'm out of the day-to-day in a much bigger way. Yeah.
So that was super helpful. Thank you. As you're speaking, I'm thinking of all the ways in terms of how I run the business, and I learned a few things there, that some adjustments around. And you know, something that's really important. That is the need to communicate and say things more than once. I think that I still am learning that idea. I always thought people just would get it. If I said something once, they'd understand it. But I've learned that the need to say that same thing time and time again, using multiple methods and mediums, and just constantly beating that same drum, so that everybody goes, "Oh, he was serious. Oh, we really, really are doing that." Because I've heard Abbott have ideas before, and he's always said them once, right? Oh, this is something he said like every single time I see him, it's being brought up. So it's a nice reminder of the need to communicate and over communicate.
Well, and everything is communication, So I, like you're wearing the brand. For me, it was always my truck is wrapped with all the brands. I wear Converse that have the brands, each brand on different shoes. I'm always branded. And so on Zoom, it was like, well, no one can see my shoes. No one can see my truck. And so I started wearing hats with different messages. I've got, 30 hats up there. Beer and barbecue, living the dream, whatever it might be. And so when you wear a hat that says it's all about people, and you're at huddle and you're at meetings, and people just are constantly reminded of the things that are important to us that we say over and over and over, you're totally right. It isn't just say it once. It isn't just say it 10 times. I mean, 10 times people miss it. It's over and over, and it becomes a part of your storytelling and your culture forever, and build momentum with it. So I love that if you were to interview any one of our people in our company, and if you ask them, well, what are your values? They'd know them. If you ask someone, what are the key principles in the company that drive you guys and your painted picture and all about people, like they could talk about them. So we missed on a lot of areas for sure. I'm not by any means trying to claim we're perfect, but the talking about it over and over and over through storytelling really works.
And I don't think I can overemphasize this point you're making. It is like the heart and soul of every company. Just this little things like you just mentioned. There are colloquialisms that are used in companies that the founders may be saying, like you said, it's all about people. By making that something that you're actually branding that, even putting on your hats, on your shoes or your shirt. Walking around, you're like a billboard saying the message without saying the message. And people are it's internalized in who they are. It's very, very powerful. That's a great reminder.
And one more ad, and this is a reminder to me, but it's the story behind it. So it's all about people came from me firing 11 people when we were a $500,000 business and learning this valuable principle. So it's the saying, but it's the living it, and then it's the story that brings it to life.
And people know where that came from in your company. They've heard that story.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like being a grandpa. Okay, you finally accepted that at some point in your life, your job as a wise person of age is to just tell stories. Yeah. And in fact, it is kind of funny, not funny. It is, as I'm just sitting here thinking about this, how much has been passed down for thousands of generations just in storytelling in certain communities, and how powerful that message has been for thousands of years. So why aren't we doing that within our businesses or our families, right? And how important is a storytell is a great reminder there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We are a few minutes away from Q&A from some of our listeners who are on right now, but I've got a few questions for you. And I know that I remember I lived through it in 2009, 2010, the Great Recession. We had a really crazy market that happened. I lived through the 2000 and 2001 recession. It was that Alan Greenspan was just ratcheting up the interest rates, and all of a sudden we're being forced by the feds into a recession. It was very short-lived, but it did happen. So I've been through a couple now in my career. And I know that Wayne Hair Got Junk lived through that in 2009, 2000. It was a very hard time, I'm sure, for your business. Not to dive into, what happened there. I think we know how hard that was for almost every brand out there.
Of course.
I'd love to hear what your thoughts are like looking forward as you think about what's happening today, how the markets are reacting, how the feds are tightening, and what that's doing to businesses. Are you seeing cracks show up in certain areas of your brands? Are you worried or concerned as a visionary looking at going, this is where this is going, and I need to make some changes today?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at life, it's ups and downs. Up. You know what? So what? We're going into a downturn. Let's be smart. Let's be strategic. Let's not cut all our spending and investment that we know works. Let's be smarter in our decisions, and let's rally as a team. I think in our painted picture, we start by saying the best way to make the future happen is to first create it in your mind. Well, I look at the recession coming, or here, or whatever it is. Where's that being created? First in people's minds. We're talking about it. I mean, I haven't done a podcast or anything in the last month where someone hasn't brought it up as you have, because that's what's on everyone's mind. So it's going to happen.
It's all over the news. Yeah.
But it's not going to be forever. You get a bad storm that hits a city, hits New York City, and everybody goes indoors and hides. I mean, a storm has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You just don't know when the end is coming. but this isn't going to be the longest storm in the world, and we're going to make it through. But I think it's just being smart and being strategic and not panicking. So 2008, I think we panicked. And I think panic is not good because you make poor decisions. Take a step back, take a deep breath. We'll get through it and choose to get through it together.
Yeah, you know, the challenge there is we're a product of our experiences, right? So when you live an event like 2009, right, where sometimes, at least I find as an entrepreneur, I'm very optimistic, overly optimistic, so much so it can be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm very confident I can just navigate whatever life's going to throw at me. I'm prepared. I can take it.
Sure.
And then going into that 2009 period, how I led the business was actually very aggressively. We'll invest into the downturn. We'll, you know, and ultimately you can't force some things you can't control that are external to you. And so it created this experience in my mind that then informs future events where something bad happens. And I go, oh, the last time I was too optimistic in a time period where there's a massive downturn, this happened. Therefore, this time I'm going to be a little bit different. I may be more conservative than I was in the past. How do you manage that? Do you find that, like, do you look at your experience in 2009 as one that is now, you know, it's in your past and that was a different experience and you look at this differently? Or do you use that experience as something that informs now how you make decisions today?
Yeah, you know, it's informed things. Experience is useful, and you look back and you go, okay, what would I do any differently? I'm glad we weathered that storm in 08, 09. A lot of our franchise partners would say it made them business people. It taught them like, okay, now I really am in business. I've got to lead. I've got to cheerlead my team. I got to make some tough decisions. So I look at experience as hindsight, and I allow it to project what's the learning going forward, but also knowing that no recession has ever been identical for different reasons, different psychology. So it still is using a bit of our gut and experience at the same time to decide what do we do from here. But I think one thing that guides us is optimism, right? Having that passion and enthusiasm for the future. Junk removal is not going away. Painting is not going away. Windows, like, it's going to exist. And so
that's what I love about home services. AI is not replacing us in my lifetime, which is wonderful.
True. Yeah. Not in our lifetime, right? There's no technology that's going to start putting paint on walls and changing colors magically. It'll happen one day, but we're not there. We're a long ways away. And until that point, our business will exist. You know, people are getting busier and busier, and they don't want to do these things themselves. They want to spend their time with family and traveling and other fun things, eating out at restaurants, cooking, whatever it might be. Home services are great. But let's understand, if it takes a bit of a dive right now, again, we're going to get through it. It's a storm.
Yeah. Spoken like a true leader. Okay, Brian, I got a few questions from the crowd here that are listening. Austin Meek, great to have you on, Austin. Thank you for for joining us. This question is for Brian. What do you make of Neighborly's acquisition of Junk King Junk Works?
Yeah, Dina Dwyer, who started Neighborly, and Mike Bidwell. I mean, great friends, great people. We've been to Waco. Love Dina to death. I mean, she's just a phenomenal person, and she's been a great mentor to us. I think, what took them so long? You know, they're in every other service. Why'd you wait so long to get into junk removal? But I'm grateful because, as you know, Neighborly is a great company with great values. You sold 5-star to them. I believe it'll help the industry as a whole, including us, because, you know, what happened when FedEx got into the business years ago and talked about overnight shipping, and nobody understood what an overnight courier was. They needed UPS and DHL and others. And this industry is a multi-billion dollar industry. And while we're a $600 million junk removal brand, we need the help of our competitors to get out on the airwaves and advertise and promote, and we'll all grow bigger and better together.
You know, I think that there was a time that I thought in competitive terms, like I had an enemy almost in some way. Like somehow this is the person I was playing against to win. And that's not how it is. I've very much changed my views on. I'm very comfortable with every person in painting when I was in painting to be very successful. Yeah, it elevates the entire industry.
For sure.
It brings confidence from the consumer to our industry to hire our services.
Yeah.
It brings more awareness. So I look at these things as all very good developments. Every time I see someone launch a brand in home services, they're seeing what I've been seeing.
For sure.
And it's been helping us. So I think that's well spoken. Andrew Edwards, thanks for joining us, Andrew. He has a question for you, Brian. Do you find using the brokers to sell, quote unquote, the brokers to sell franchise locations in the U.S. the best approach, or other options?
So I'm a big fan of brokers when they're the right broker. And what I mean by that is if they understand that the most important thing is getting the right person into the right business, that this isn't just about doing a deal for the short term, this is a long term. So if a broker says to us, we've got this great candidate, I want to see what you guys think, and we tell them we don't think it's a great candidate, the brokers that respect our sort of opinion, saying, the person's not the right fit and here's why. And if they can learn from that to then find us the right candidate, great. Where brokers, I think I struggle with is when they get frustrated that we don't say yes to their deals. And this is a long term. I mean, we have so many brokers that have fed us lots and lots of great franchise owners, but I think there's been more that have said, you need to take this person. This person's great. I think they're great. Well, just because you think they're great doesn't mean they're going to follow our systems, and that this is a relationship that you build with your brokers to trust each other, that we're going to tell you if this is not the right person, but we hope that you can then alter to find that right person to bring them in, and then we both win, or all three parties win. Yeah,
I think I've heard that time and time again, and we use a lot of brokers, Andrew, at 5 Star. I mean, 60%, maybe even 70% of our deals are being done through ultimately franchise consultants or brokers or whatever you want to call them. And they've been fantastic partners. They've helped us find the right people. And I think that what Brian just said is spot on. Like you need to know beyond if they have money, who you want to let in your company. And if you can't, you don't know what that is, it's going to be very hard to say no to somebody.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the moment when someone on my team told me that the franchisee that came for Discovery Day was not a fit, was the moment I started to realize we've arrived at becoming a franchisor, a true franchisor that cared deeply about the business and about who we're letting in. It was as much about protecting that person from buying our business and failing as it was about us protecting our own culture and our organization. So very well said.
Yeah.
I think, Brian, it'd be worth your company and you are fantastic. I mean, I think probably in the top 1% on planet Earth at PR. I don't know if there's anybody more effective at leveraging PR. And I got to believe it's in your DNA, it's in the organization. Everyone in the organization believes it and supports it. And it's how you help communicate what you're doing. How impactful has that been on franchise development for you? And has it paid dividends in your view? Is that one of the reasons why you use PR?
Yeah, it's paid dividends in every way, shape, or form. It's storytelling on steroids. When we got on the Oprah Winfrey Show, or when we got on the Ellen DeGeneres Show twice, or CNN, Wall Street Journal, blah, 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 the list goes on. Not trying to brag, but to sort of illustrate that we've told stories through massive outlets and social media that have just propelled us forward. They build credibility, third-party trust on our brand to consumers. They help Fran Dev, where they get people going, oh, wow, I want to be a part of this. It's been phenomenal. I mean, we are in the storytelling age. I mean, you and I right now, all we're doing for the last hour is sharing stories.
Yeah.
And there's no shortage of stories out there. I think the key is people figuring out how to tell the right stories through the right mediums. People often go out and just put everything on social media and hope it takes. But good stories are the only thing that ever win. Things go viral because they're good stories. Things don't go viral for any other reason. Like someone's entertained, there's a big idea in there, and they just go, wow. And people try and recreate that. But really, it's just finding the right stories.
I think it might be worth just unpacking for our listeners. For example, you mentioned you got an Ellen DeGeneres, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that was not an easy thing to do. Not many people have ever achieved something like that, or Oprah Winfrey for that matter. Do you have a PR firm that's helping you, or is it PR is so part of your business that no, your team is the one that's leading that internally?
Yeah, we did it ourselves. Nobody can tell our story like us. And so we reached out, and the Ellen DeGeneres was a great team effort by people in our company. But it took, I think, 15 years to happen. We'd tried over the years. We'd given up. We'd tried again, to the point that we were on Ellen once about 1-800-GOT-JUNK and a sort of 1-800-GOT-JUNK stunt they were a part of. But I had this vision that I wanted Ellen's help in building this Can You Imagine movement, having walls in schools where people have big dreams and bold goals and ideas up on the wall. I've created some in schools in Canada, and we just started through Ellen creating one in the United States in a inner city school in Washington, D.C. And Ellen bought into my vision for Can You Imagine? And all the execs kept saying to me when we were pitching them, they said, we like this, but we just don't have CEOs on our show. We've never had a CEO on our show. And I said, Bill Gates has been on your show. And they said, well, Bill Gates isn't a CEO. He's a philanthropist. And, I'm like, okay, you're right. I was their first CEO on their show in 19 years. And so I said to them, I'm like, I'll be the first. Here's what I believe. Here's what I see. I talked to Ellen backstage about this idea the last time I was in studio, but wasn't on the show. This is going to work. And so I actually said to them, I said, I think you need to go talk to Ellen. I think you need to have a conversation because she sees what I see. And they did, and they came back, and Ellen actually says on the show, if you Google Ellen DeGeneres, Brian Scudamore, at the very end, she says, the reason I brought Brian back was, and so I think pitching a story to the press is having a one-on-one connection with someone. And when you can connect with someone on the power of sharing that story, that's the key. A PR company, and there's plenty out there, and I'm sure they're doing great business, but they don't connect with someone in the same way that the founder, the CEO, or whoever's experienced the story would connect with.
Was that, I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, that was part of your painted picture, wasn't it? That you wanted to be a few things. You wanted to be a business case in like a Harvard Business Review or something like that. Yeah. And so that was actually, it's not like you just, to show you how much intention went into what Brian's talking about. This was something that was literally painted on your wall at your office, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And so in WTF Willing to Fail, there's a chapter in there about envisioning the future and making it happen. And I actually talk in there about one of our goals, one of our Can You Imagines was to be on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And I said, it hasn't happened yet. If anyone happens to know Ellen, please hook me up. And I said, one day we will be on her show. And so I was willing to put it in writing as part of the manifestation in my book. And then when I shared that book with Ellen behind stage, and I said, by the way, you're in this book. And I told her the story, and she connected with the story.
I want to pull a quote up that I have a little quote thing in my my phone. I go to often to remind myself of things that that are truths for me. And you just said something I think was really important. First of all, I think it takes great courage as a leader to be willing to say things that have not yet happened, but you are going to through your team and your force of will make happen. Because you're basically saying that I'm willing to fail. When you say you're going to do something, there's a chance it won't come to fruition, right? Yeah. But there's also a chance it will, and you have a higher likelihood of achieving greatness if you're willing to articulate what it is you really want to do. And this quote I carry in my phone. My youngest son, who does have ADHD, is in karate, and on their wall it says, "The greatest test of courage is to bear defeat without losing heart." And so for you, right, going 15 years of saying I want to be on that show, but not having achieved that thing, it is the ability to not lose heart, even though something is so important to you. So I think that's been a great share, and I really appreciate that, Brian. This has been such a pleasure. I really appreciate you giving us this hour, Brian, and hopefully our listeners also have enjoyed this conversation, which is I think more for me than anyone else, I think, at this point. But I wish you all well, and blessings upon you and your family. And this year, I hope finishes great. And I can't wait to see what happens for your brands next year. Yeah, awesome. Having fun every day. And the recession will be fun.
You got to frame it. Everyone's got to frame it that way. We are going to have a good time. We're going to make it through. It's going to be okay. So, Scott, thank you so much for having me. Great to get to learn a bit more about you. I will say, when you come to Vancouver one day, let's go grab a beer, a coffee, whatever it is, together and hang out. And we can talk about skiing and kids and all that fun stuff we started to talk about before the podcast.
That sounds like a great idea. Great plan. Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and more importantly, that it brings some value in building your home services business. If you'd like to access more of this amazing content, like and subscribe below. If you'd like to be part of our live recordings and get involved with the speakers and myself, click the subscribe to calendar button or the link in the description to get updates to future events.